Welcome to a very special Friday edition of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, and next to me we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, as we prepare for Monday Night Football. Primetime is coming to Denver. Are you hyped?
I'm hyped. Where are we, though? Why are we in here, Elisa?
We're in here because it's a special Friday edition. I just said it.
Got it.
It's a special Friday edition. So we have to, get a new little setup, switch it up, because, the Broncos are going to be switching it up with some amazing jerseys. We have the Summit white helmets.
Wow, that was so good.
And we have the Midnight Navy jerseys that are going to be, showing out on primetime football.
That's right. It's going to be way after Midnight Navy when we go home from the game.
Yeah. It's going to be morning.
Monday night. It's going to be early morning maybe. But hopefully we're going home with a win.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to see these jerseys for the first time. Obviously unveiled the Mile High collection earlier this year. Everyone's seen the orange jerseys, the white jerseys, seen the throwbacks. This is the first time that they're going to wear these Midnight Navies.
Yeah.
Always love the blue jerseys. Some of the most iconic moments have come in these blue jerseys. You think of Peyton Manning throwing 509. You think of this defense just shutting down Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in prime time back in 2015. There's been some big moments, and so they're a little bit different than the old blue jerseys, but I know fans love when the Broncos wear the blue jerseys and got the white helmets.
Yeah.
They're going to look pretty sweet. And they'll look better, of course, if the Broncos win.
Of course. After practice, PJ Locke had said, he's like, I can't wait for the season to be over so I can take this helmet home because it's so nice. He was like, between the throwbacks and these jerseys, he was like, it's hard to pick which one of my favorites. He's like, but they're nice. And he said, he's like, when you get a chance to play in front of the whole world, he's like, it's fun. So, look good, feel good, play good. So.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity to, PJ Locke said in the locker room, an opportunity to kind of prove yourself, prove some people wrong, silence some doubters. There's a stat that we've discussed a lot that has gone around about the Broncos being undefeated against teams under 500 and believe one win against teams over 500. Well, you can't control who you play, right? And the Browns coming in at 3-8. You got to take care of business if you want to. You're going to get chances over the next few weeks to play the Chargers, the Chiefs, and then if you make it to the playoffs, certainly teams that are above 500 and are really quality football teams. But this is a sneaky good Browns team that showed that last week against Pittsburgh in the snow. They're tough. They're physical. It feels to me like this is going to be kind of a grinded out game, but certainly the Broncos are going to have a chance in prime time, only game on, to show the world what they're all about.
Yeah, the thing with Monday Night Football too, it brings out the best in players. And we talked to some of the guys after practice, and they're just like, something about the bright lights, something about family coming out, friends coming out, because like you said, it's the only thing on TV that it's a must watch. And for this team, it's been must watch TV over the last few weeks, in particular with Bo Nix and this defense and the way that they've really been kind of gelling together, and the young guys have been stepping up. We're going to talk about all that and a lot more. We're going to get to the comments a little later though, because we have to. Yeah, we're gonna get later because you don't have anything to look up the comments right now.
I was thinking about that as we were going. We have Susanna off screen. She's gonna toss me my phone right here. We're gonna hope that
nice.
We're gonna hope that it doesn't go through the window.
Okay, yeah, for a
Maybe
second.
Come a little closer, Susan, then toss the phone.
Let's see. Oh.
Wow.
Look, our quarterback guru just turned into a wide receiver right now as he's preparing to look up some comments.
I got them all pulled up.
Oh, look. The risk that he takes Broncos country just to...
That's right.
Just to get the comments.
Just to get the comments to you. Okay, this is from our show before last week's game against the Raiders. Obviously, a big win for the Broncos. Jeremy 1 said, cool beanie. That was to you. You had the beige beanie on.
Now, I'm super orange for this show. So
that's true. What do we got going?
This is the Unreal collaboration with the Denver Broncos, and I'm rocking it. And it's super orange and super warm, which, as a California girl, I need it out here because it's starting to get cold.
I didn't get sent that. That's a tough look for me. Oh, well, I've got this.
Yeah, I don't have that. So
is that true?
Yeah, I don't have that. That's a nice, It's a nice little windbreaker.
Jeremy Wynn also said Denver's getting back to their winning ways. His team has been a joy to watch all season. Keep it going and go Broncos. Bulwark Tier says the difference in this team from last year is brilliant. I'm excited. Thanks as always for this week's AA. James Diego said, if I heard you correctly, Von Miller was not Defensive Rookie of the Year. He was. So I appreciate the correction, but the correction's wrong. But James, thanks for listening. He said, you guys are great. And he says, hello, Elisa.
Hello.
No acknowledgement of Susanna from James. Tough. Jeremy also says,
I acknowledge
PS2 for Pro Bowl. We've got plenty of Susanna comments coming. It's going to be fine.
Ooh.
PS2 for Pro Bowl. He's been lights out all season. Bo has been playing at a Pro Bowl level, but he's a rookie. AFC's tough to make the Pro Bowl in as a quarterback. You got so many guys: Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Mahomes. I'm sure I'm leaving guys out inadvertently, but yeah, Bo has been playing since week 10. His 8-0 touchdown interception ratio is actually the best in the entire NFL of any quarterback.
Say it louder. Say it louder for the critics in the back.
Well, I think there's meetings going on. I'm not going to say it any louder, but they get it. Bill Bellell.
Burner, maybe.
Just keep up the momentum. PS2 is this generation's champ or Neon Dion, and they are both in the Hall of Fame.
Ooh.
We love Champ.
We do love Champ.
I think Champ was at the Raiders game, too.
He was at the Raiders game.
Wow. Both Raiders games this year.
My first ever signed jersey was from Champ Bailey. I waited in line at NFL kickoff after we won the Super Bowl, and he signed my jersey on my brother's jersey. Actually, technically, he signed my jersey, and then they cut off the line, and my brother was still in line. And then my brother looked at me like, we are not flying back to California, or I will leave you here. So I was like,
that's not my problem.
Yeah, no, I looked at Champ, and I was like, Champ, I know you're signing my jersey. I was like, my brother was right behind me. He got cut out. Can you please sign his jersey? And he was like, yeah, give it to me. I was like, thank you. And then I got my brother's jersey.
Good guy, Champ.
Good guy, good girl. What do you mean? Good guy, me. I helped out my brother.
Well, yeah, but Champ could have said, I'm good.
You're not going to say that. Champ is a good guy.
That's what I just said. All right. Nick says, I have a lot of confidence in Bo this week. This guy's getting better every week. I finally think we've got our franchise guy. He looked good. Okay. Lone Voice 7935. Sue's in the house. Go Broncos.
Suze is in the house. She's just behind the scenes
She's
today.
off camera.
She's behind the scenes today.
She said she didn't want to be on the show with us. So it's okay.
I think the day that you call out sick, which may never happen, but the day that happens, she's gonna come in here and just
would drag myself here.
She's gonna host.
Sue's the eye. We should have an eye roll counter back here for Sue's behind the camera. It's a little obscene. Nerd Fiction says, you can tell Suze is so much more intelligent about the game than the questions she gets lobbed. It's true. Suze is she's very intelligent, knows a lot about football. If we let her talk about football the whole show, it would become clear how much we don't know. So we're trying to protect ourselves and our jobs. So kind of a save my own behind situation there. Robert Barlow, Bo has outplayed Jaden Daniels. So many people were biased with Daniels right out of the gate. I feel like it's very unfair. Wow.
What did I say? Remember I said this is the story of the turtle and the hare. I told you.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Is it turtle or tortoise? I thought we had a big discussion about tortoises versus turtles.
I like saying turtle versus tortoise.
Gesturing behind the camera. I don't know.
I like saying turtle. So
okay. Well,
I like turtles.
Yeah. Bo, he's slowly and steadily.
Yeah.
He's making up ground on Jaden.
Slow and steady wins the race. I saw a clip of his on the internet where he was like at a camp and he was teaching quarterbacks how to do dropbacks, and he was like, look, I know this is boring. He was like, I'm bored. He was like, but he's like, when you get to the NFL, he's like, this is stuff you're going to do every day. He's like, so you have to master the boring stuff. See, that's what I'm talking about. Steady wins the race. You have to, the
touchdowns aren't boring. I like those.
Yeah, those are fun.
All right, now from our Monday recap show, right? Was it Monday?
Oh, yes, it was Monday.
It's like, what day is it?
I don't know.
Who knows what's happening? We're in this nice alternate podcast studio. Okay, Bill Bellell. Oh, he's back again.
He's back.
Says first like. Yes. Thanks, Bill.
We appreciate you.
Also says tough, grinded out win. They are showing more ways to win each week, it seems. It really is fun to watch. And you just feel they should win each week because they have the it factor that Denver has this season. Don't worry, it is not contagious. But best of all, it causes wins. Fair wins in following C's, Broncos country. It's nice. It's poetic. Sorry, I didn't read it very well.
It sounded fine.
Yeah. Quentin Caldwell says, I noticed how in the past we would start out fast and lose some games. Now we start slow and turn the heat on in the second half. I love the fight in the second half, and we get the win. That's what playoff teams do. I think this team has shown its ability to start fast this season. If it's against Tampa, Atlanta, they started pretty fast. So I don't know that I think more than that, it's just that this team can win in different ways. And that shows that the margin for error is a little bit higher. They're a little bit maybe tougher and resilient than they have been in previous seasons. And so things don't have to go perfectly or play out exactly according to plan. And I think a lot of that, and we'll talk more about him, is the quarterback. I think Bo has
football. We've said it from the start. Firing all cylinders from special teams, defense, offense. We said once it starts clicking, this team is going to be really hard to beat. We've seen that last few weeks.
That's right. Okay, just a few more. Brad Elrod, 9555. I have no idea what this means, but I'm going to read it. Werewolf, their castle, your nails. I don't know. Likes the nails, I guess.
These are corpse bride nails.
Unless they're mine. You're talking about my nails?
You don't have any nails.
That's true. Because I bite them because I'm terrified during games.
The anxiety rises.
Yeah. Okay. Team Took says, Court's been doing this. I bet Bo's happy he's still there. We've talked about Cortland, how valuable that is for Bo to have somebody like that.
Yeah. And it's definitely, he's gotten praise from everyone, from head coach Sean Payton to Bo. I mean, even, like I said, Bo Nix called them his security blanket. And it's like, that's somebody I'm happy that I have. We are as well.
That's right. Nick Wise says, it's about time people recognize Coach Payton as being a top, if not the best quarterback coach of all time. Wow.
Who wasn't recognizing him?
Yeah, I think people recognize the role that Sean Payton has in Bo playing well this season.
Yep.
Nick also says, with that being said, do you guys think Bo Nix could possibly have a CJ Stroud type of end to the season in terms of the unexpected deep playoff run? I think this is a team, the way they win, which is defense, not turning the ball over, that to me feels like a way to win a playoff game or two. And
defense wins championships.
It's you never know what happens once you get into the tournament. Teams go on runs. Teams get hot. It's been a little bit like you used to see more 5 or 6 seeds kind of do that. It feels like maybe a little more top heavy in recent years, but certainly once you get in, if you play good defense, you don't turn the ball over. Bo Nix plays at a high level. There's no reason the Broncos can't go on a run. Now, if you're a 6 or 7 seed, you got to go 3 consecutive games on the road. That's tricky, but you got to take it one game at a time.
Yep.
All right. Last one. True Apex King 2995 says Denver can shock the world with a Super Bowl upset.
Let's shock the world then.
That would indeed be. They'd shock the world. That would be impressive if they went from a team that everybody said was going to have the worst record in the NFL externally to winning the Super Bowl. That would be sick.
That would be that.
Let's just take it 1 week at a time.
But see, that's the beauty about the playoffs, right? It's like once you get in, it's all that matters. Just get in. Like we've seen.
To be clear, we're not predicting that a Super Bowl run is coming, but we're just hoping to get in, and then you see what happens.
Let me see what happens. It's called positive thinking.
We're going to toss this back to Suze.
All right, let's see our quarterback.
Oh, my gosh. That was a tremendous throw that hit Susanna. It's off camera. It hit her directly in the hands.
If you guys are listening to this podcast, make sure you guys head to YouTube and watch it, because that was pretty amazing.
Susanna did not move her hands. They just they didn't even attempt to close. Just hit them right in the hands and then fell.
Well, she would have caught my phone. That's all I'm going to say about that. So as we go look.
Susanna, do you have anything to say for yourself? I can relay what you say. It hit you in the hands. Susanna claims it's a bad throw. We'll look at the tape.
We'll look at the tape. You guys let us know in the comments. All the people that are watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments how Eric's.
It was good form, I thought.
Let's see. Well, you know who does have a good form is quarterback Bo Nix, because he has won NFL Rookie of the Week.
Good thing Suze ain't out there catching passes for him.
He would win it every week with her catching passes.
Susanna off camera just said she agrees with me. Did
she? Yeah, I'm sure she did. She's about to come up and just stand here and combat all these accusations you have. Well, Bo Nix was named NFL Rookie of the Week for Week 12. He's the first Bronco to win NFL Rookie of the Week in 3 consecutive weeks since they started handing this out in 2002. His 3 selections are also the most by any Broncos quarterback and the second most by any player in team history, behind only Noshawn Moreno's 4 selections in 2009. And I know what you're going to say, and don't say it. So Bo Nix has been playing at a very high level. Clearly, week after week, we've seen that. But I think it's something that me and you have seen from the start, obviously, with the Broncos having not as many primetime games, maybe not too many eyes are on this team. But now the attention is really growing around this team. They just got flexed with Thursday Night Football against the game versus the Chargers. And now you have this game before you go into the bye week. You're in a pretty good spot. You have a primetime game on Monday Night Football. You go into a bye week. You have a home game, and then you have Thursday Night Football. So these next 3 weeks are going to be very interesting for this team. And when you see the way that Bo Nix has kind of handled all this attention and all the praise, what very well deserved, how do you see him just continuing to grow, especially in these 3 key games?
Yeah, well, I think that the great thing about Bo is that he's not concerned about winning Rookie of the Week for the 3rd consecutive week. He wasn't concerned about winning AFC Offensive Player of the Week when that happened a week ago, because his point was they're only going to pay attention to your last game, and so if you play poorly in the next one, they're going to come after you, right? And so I think one of the things Sean Payton has talked about with Bo Nix is that he's got this great level head where he knows what's important and what's not. Right, and these awards are great for fans, and certainly there's been a lot of Twitter debate the last few days about who's watching Bo Nix's tape and who's not, and where Bo Nix should be ranked among all the quarterbacks. I know some sites have him still down at 30 or 31, which is insane to me. It makes my brain hurt, but whatever. I know
that's why you don't have any nails.
You got to get clicks somehow if you're these other sites. But I think that we can talk about Monday Night Football being an opportunity, right, for Bo to go out there and show the world what he can do. Bo, I can guarantee you, is not looking at it that way. He's not looking at it as, I've got to go throw 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns. He's looking at it as, I've got to find a way to beat the Cleveland Browns to give us the best possible chance at getting to 8-5, taking that next step toward a playoff berth. And we'll talk about the importance of this game. But again, that doesn't mean we can't talk about it. And when you look,
that's why we're here, so we can talk about it.
And when you look at what he's done over the last few weeks, 8 touchdowns, 0 picks, which over the last 3 games I mentioned that leads all NFL quarterbacks. He's only the 2nd rookie quarterback in NFL history to have 8 touchdowns and 0 picks over a 3-game span. He and Peyton Manning are the only Broncos quarterbacks to ever do that.
Wow.
And he's getting to the point, so if he throws multiple touchdowns and for 200 yards this week, he'll become the first rookie in NFL history to do that in 5 consecutive home games.
Wow.
But I also think what's impressive about Bo is that we're kind of moving beyond just this is what he's done for a rookie, or he's the only rookie to do this, or he's one of 3 rookies to do this. He's comparing really favorably to quarterbacks of any experience level. And if you look at since week 10, he's 5th in the NFL in completion percentage, 9th in pass yards per game. Again, I mentioned 1st in touchdown to interception ratio, and 2nd in passer rating with 118.6.
Wow.
And when your defense is playing this well, as it has in Denver for a lot of years, I've often said, can you find a way to get a top 15 or so quarterback? And if you have a top 10 quarterback, the way that Bo Nix is playing the last few weeks, it really opens up what this team is capable of kind of in the immediate future and down the road. Someone was saying you'd shock the world to win the Super Bowl. Well, if you have a defense that ranks in the top 5 and you have a quarterback that is playing like a top 10 quarterback, that's, again, not saying that's going to happen or that's the expectation in year 1 with Bo, but teams can win Super Bowls that way and can compete for Super Bowls that way. And so, and then you look at, again, among rookies, just the passer rating, impressive over the last few weeks. The fact that he's not turning the ball over. We saw a stat last week that over the last 10 games, he's got 20 touchdowns and 2 turnovers. There's only 4 or 5 veterans that have done that over the last 10 years, and you're talking about guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes.
Notable guys that have gone on to win Super Bowls in their careers.
And so, Bo is playing at a really high level, and it's also that he's making big plays. I think he has the 3rd most completions of 20-plus yards of anybody in the NFL. But he's also avoiding the negative plays, right? And I think he was only sacked once last week against the Raiders. There's times where he's juking Max Crosby and able to get rid of the ball and avoid a 10-yard loss that maybe, if it's 3rd down, the difference between a sack and an incompletion may not seem like much. But if you're trying to flip the field and you're in a tight game and you're playing this field position battle, that can absolutely play a big role. And so the ability to avoid negative plays has been really impressive. And you got to do that again this week when you face a guy like Myles Garrett, who had 3 sacks last week against Russell Wilson and the Steelers, and is coming off AFC Defensive Player of the Week honors.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at that defense, Malcolm Roach has said it. He's like, we have to be ready to bring that same energy because Myles Garrett, one of the best players at his position in the NFL, he was like, we know that he's going to try to get our offense off the field. So we have to do the same for them, especially when you look at how Jameis Winston has been playing lately and everything. You having trouble there with your water? I feel like you used all your strength when you were setting up the tripod for this.
We're good. I was trying not to draw attention to it.
You drew attention to it. Again, please, if you're listening to this, make sure you guys go to the YouTube and watch this because we should do a breakdown of him opening his water there.
The main thing is that my chair just feels really unsteady and I feel like I'm about to fall backwards out of it, so I'm uncomfortable.
It's also like the clear background. I feel like you just feel like you're floating in the air.
Or falling through the
air. But yeah, as we kind of look at the way that Knicks has been able to avoid sacks, like negative like plays and things.
There goes the paper. This is a disaster.
As long as I don't drop this Microsoft Surface, I think we'll be good. But like I said, when you look at the way that this defense has been playing, the way that this offense has been playing, special teams, you said it. Bo was able to really maneuver on the field, and although there were drives that didn't play out the way he wanted to, he was able to trust in his special teams. Will Lutz, shout out to him for winning AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, doing a career high in points for himself as well. But when you look at the way this team tried to trust each other, even when Will talked about that, he's like, look, like I'm just there to do this when they need me to do it. He's like, we do get recognized, but it's also just me going out there and doing my job. And that's part of what helps Bo and what helps this defense not get off balance. Like, okay, we got some points. They don't come away empty with drives, which at the beginning of the season, you kind of saw that a little more where they would get out of field goal range and then it was a little hard for them to kind of bounce back.
Yeah, Will's been a weapon. And he talked to the media this week and he got a joke that Sean Payton said, like, hey, we don't want you kicking that many field goals. We don't want you winning this award again.
You're done.
But Will also said that when you look at these explosive offenses, it means you're moving the ball.
Yeah.
And so, New Orleans the same way. You often do get a lot of field goals because even if you're scoring touchdowns at a reasonable rate, your drives that aren't ending in touchdowns are at least ending in field goals instead of 3-and-out punt. Mm-hmm. So, he's been a weapon. Cortland Sutton, of course, the way he's been playing has been impressive. I think Pro Bowl worthy in the top 10 in receiving yards. I think leads all NFL receivers in receiving yards since week 8. So he's been playing at a really high level. We've talked a lot about him each week because he's deserved that, the way he's kind of come through for Bo, the way that he has been that safety net, like you mentioned. But the offense, I think the impressive thing for me is that the third down percentage continues to get better. Sean Payton mentioned coming into this season that the goal to go red zone offense had to be better than it was a year ago when they were really not very efficient. It's been better. I'm sure they want to continue to improve that, but it's been better, especially kind of the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. You've felt that has improved. And this is an offense that I think is hung in there against good defenses like the Chiefs. And then when you play a defense that isn't so good, you can go and put up points. But this one feels to me you've got playmakers in this Cleveland defense, whether it's Myles Garrett, whether it's Denzel Ward, who I believe is allowing the second worst completion percentage of any corner in the NFL right now. I think he would be matched up with Cortland Sutton a lot to try to take him out of the game. So it's going to be a battle. And certainly this Cleveland team, you don't quite know.
They're sneaky.
Yeah.
They're sneaky.
And like from week to week, you don't quite know what you're going to get. Like they beat Baltimore impressively and scored 30 plus. And then they
beat the Steelers in primetime in the Snow Globe game.
And then between those, like they lost to the Chargers in a game that kind of got out of hand. And so, and obviously have lost 8 times this season. And so you're not quite sure like what Cleveland team are you going to get. But a lot of the change has been since they've, Deshaun Watson suffers that season-ending injury. They go to Jameis Winston, and it feels like a lot of the success has come since Jameis entered the lineup. Yeah,
he's definitely been able to kind of be a spark in this team, and I think another part of it is he's been really connecting with a former Bronco, Jerry Jeudy, on that team, and that's a familiar face that's going to come back here to Denver. And when you look at their connections, Jerry Jeudy has been pretty impressive. let me see, I had a stat here for him, because he's kind of been the go-to weapon for Winston over the last couple of games. Jeudy has led Cleveland in receiving yards in each of their last 2 games in particular. He recorded 80-plus receiving yards in both. And Jameis Winston, obviously we know that this defense blitzes the highest percentage in the NFL. And Winston has 3 passing TDs, 0 interceptions, and an 121.2 passer rating this season when facing the blitz. So when you kind of have that and you have a familiar face that you're starting to get more comfortable with, that's something that the Broncos defense is going to have to really get after. Not only getting Winston off balance to cause, a turnover, a takeaway early, hopefully in the game, but at the same time, it's when you look at this familiar face, you can say, okay, let's take that weapon away. Let's make him try to find different ways to win. And the thing with that too is you have Nick Chubb as well. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week, but he was kept to under 60 yards rushing. So that's a really sneaky stat for me, because it's they don't need him to really go off and have, a huge run game, right? But if they get close enough, they kind of have him to kind of punch it in. So that's one of those 2 key players are someone I'm kind of eyeing on, because again, we never know which Browns team we're going to get, but we know they have a little recipe of success. Throw to the air, and then you're able to kind of punch it in in the end zone. That's something that the Broncos are not going to want to happen.
Yeah, and Denver's red zone defense, we just mentioned it offensively. Denver's red zone defense is first in the NFL in goal to go, first in the NFL from inside the 20. So they've been good at holding teams to field goals there, which will be important. The against the blitz stat is interesting because it's something to consider, certainly if you're Vance Joseph. When you look at when Jameis Winston is not blitzed, it's 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 80 passer rating. And so you'd look at that and you think, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't blitz him as much. But then I think back to week 4 against the Jets, right? And there was all this talk about you don't blitz Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is going to figure it out. He's seen everything. Right. And the Broncos stuck with what they did, and it worked really well. And they held the Jets without a touchdown. They got after Aaron Rodgers all day, sacked him, 4 or 5 times. And so, and we've seen some other games like this so far where, the stats would tell you, hey, this guy does really well against the blitz. But guess what? The Broncos are blitzing a little bit better than most other teams. Yeah. And the reason they'll be able to blitz is because the secondary is playing well. Now, obviously, Riley Moss's status is in question for this week. Did not practice or was not estimated to practice on the Thursday injury report. As we're recording this, haven't seen the Friday one yet, but certainly would say it's at least a question whether he's going to play this week. And so, if Levi Wallace has to step in for him, how does this Broncos secondary respond? Because part of what's made them so good, again, blitzing the passer is that the quarterback has to hold it for an extra second because guys aren't open. And a lot of teams, they blitz because their corners can't cover. The Broncos blitz and their corners can cover. So if you're Jameis...
It's a dual threat there.
Yeah, and so if you're Jameis and you see 5 rushers coming at you or 6 rushers, you're like, man, I got to get the ball away quick. Okay, but Pat Surtain, is just all over this guy. You have nowhere to go with the ball. And when Riley Moss was on the other side, he was playing just as well. Jaquan McMillan in the slot, who's had some really good moments this season. So my question will be, without, if the Broncos do not have Riley Moss, can Levi Wallace kind of step in, or whoever it is? Is it somebody else that steps in there?
Yeah.
But can he step in and play at least a comparable level so that the Broncos aren't in a situation where they're blitzing, but boom, some guys immediately open, and now they're off to the races, because you do have fewer guys obviously back there if you're blitzing.
Right.
But yeah, this Vance Joseph defense, Zach Allen, if he's back, he helps this defensive line certainly. You've got Nick Bonito, who's now at double-digit sacks, and so my guess, based on what Vance Joseph has done, is that they're going to continue to bring the pressure, and Jameis might complete a few passes, maybe throws a touchdown, but also you hope that, because Jameis has shown an ability to turn, or he turns the ball over at times, right? So maybe you're willing to trade some of that to get a strip sack, to get an interception, to get that big play, turn it over, I think a couple times against the Steelers. So those plays are there to be made. He's obviously a big guy, hard to bring down. Yeah. But, I think this Denver defense can still get after Jameis Winston. Yeah,
well, to your point, in that TNF game, he had a few turnovers. It was really towards the end of the game, and you kind of the Steelers offense wasn't able to sustain the drive to close out the game. And that's something that this offense, I feel, has gotten better in over the last couple of weeks, is just really extending those drives, whether it's third down or just kind of hitting Cortland Sutton on the big plays. But that's going to play a key part, because it's one thing to get the turnover, but it's another thing to sustain a drive to either, clock management, take time off the clock, or just get points on the board to continue to extend their leads.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's interesting from a defensive standpoint is I think we get this research packet. I don't think it's on here, but I believe they were talking about last week on the Thursday night broadcast that the Browns' third down offense might be the worst in the NFL. And so the way that happens is that you put the Browns in third and longs, right? And you stop the run game. You mentioned Nick Chubb only has 60 yards, or has fewer than 60 yards in I think his last 5 games or so.
6 consecutive weeks. They're looking to hold him to that in this week. So yes, 5 is correct.
So if you can hold him in check, first or second down, make it third and long, put Jameis Winston in these tough positions. 1, you're going to force some punts, I think.
Yeah.
2, you might put him in third and long, get some turnovers, some takeaways that, as we know, the Broncos, I think, are 7-1 when they force a turnover. So that's a big stat to get. And then just in general, you look at it, the Broncos have allowed fewer than 20 points in 9 games this year, which is the most in the NFL. The Browns, meanwhile, have scored less than 20 in 9 games, which is the most in the NFL. So it is worth noting that both of their games with 20-plus points have come in the last few weeks with Jameis as the quarterback. So there's maybe a little something to be worried about there, but you're looking at points per game, Cleveland 30th, yards per game 29th, yards per play, third down, sacks all last. And then you look at the Denver defense, third in points per game, third in yards per game, best in yards per play, 14th in third down, which is the only area really that they're not top 10, and then obviously best in the sacks.
Yeah, I think another thing to notice about this defense, the Broncos are averaging 14.8 points per game allowed at home in 2024, which is obviously a good stat because they have their next two games at home, between this Monday night game, the bye week, and then when the Colts come into town. So I think that's also another stat. Like, it's interesting to see because this defense has prided itself in protecting home field. That's been something that came from the first week when they were struggling a little bit. But now I feel like it's like, okay, this is the time that we really kind of put the pressure on and make sure like they know it. If any team that comes in here, it's going to be hard to score here. It's going to be hard to win here. And again, they've had to use the altitude advantage so that they can continue the streak that they're on. Because it's getting close in the AFC playoff race for sure. Yeah,
Lisa, a good point there about the home field advantage the Broncos have had. One last thing I wanted to mention about this Browns offense versus Denver's defense is, of course, Jerry Jeudy coming back. You mentioned kind of the stats that he's had, but I'm excited for this matchup against Pat Surtain. We'll see kind of what the Broncos do defensively, but certainly you'd think with Amari Cooper going to Buffalo earlier in the year that Jerry is kind of undoubtedly their top weapon now. So if Surtain is going up against Jeudy, that is just one to watch because you've got back-to-back first-round picks from the Broncos. Both went to Alabama. We talked a lot about competing against each other as teammates. Now it's an opportunity to do it in prime time, and that should be a fun battle. And I don't know if Pat's like a big trash talker, but you'd think former teammates, both in college and the NFL, maybe they talk a little bit more than usual. So yeah, it's Jeudy and then David Njoku, of course, at tight end. You've got to find a way. He's gigantic. He's a matchup problem, especially in the red zone. So the Broncos will have to have a good plan there to get him stopped. But you mentioned kind of things heating up here as we go down the stretch. As we're recording this, we mentioned it's Friday. Dolphins lost to the Packers last night. That's big for the we can't cheer in the press box, but we can cheer here.
We can cheer here.
We can cheer here.
We're allowed.
But yeah, big loss that the Dolphins had. They've got 7 losses now. Still a couple of tough games against the Texans, against the Niners. The Broncos really need to finish probably a win ahead of Miami because of some of the AFC record potential tiebreakers that the Dolphins might hold. So that's one to watch there. I know that they dropped this game and feels like every team is 2 losses back of the Broncos right now who's below them, but you've got to keep winning because you don't want to give up this advantage that you have here. We'll see what happens. Obviously, Cincinnati playing Pittsburgh this weekend is a big game. It's interesting. The Broncos, if they keep winning and they beat the Chargers in a few weeks, you could, and Pittsburgh maybe falls off a little bit. They've got some tough games against Cincinnati, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Kansas City. Yeah. There's actually a scenario where the Broncos jump all the way to the 5 seed. It's not that unlikely.
Wow.
But the kind of the tricky thing is that this weekend's game between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, if Pittsburgh wins, it helps Denver's chances of getting the 7 seed and getting into the postseason. Whereas if Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh, it actually helps the Broncos' chances of getting the 5 seed. So if you're a Broncos fan, you got to decide, would you rather just make it, or would you rather make it and have a higher seed and maybe you give yourself a more favorable matchup in the postseason?
Yeah.
I think you got to get in, right? And so, but either way, that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game, one of the outcomes could end up helping the Broncos, but you've got to find a way, if you're Denver, to, I think it was, who was in the locker room who said, like, it was Adam Troutman, where last year the Broncos went into Christmas Eve and they played a New England team that had 2 or 3 wins. It was not a good New England team.
Yeah.
They were actively, I think, trying to better their draft position. And
nice choice of words.
Thank you. And it was Bailey Zappi, right? Like, the Broncos get a takeaway on the first series and then somehow do not score, which is just, it was tough. And you end up losing that football game. You're down multiple scores. You bat all the way back and you lose it at the end. And ultimately, it's, I don't think even if they'd won that game that the tiebreakers ended up working out in their favor. But it was very easy to look at, hey, we had an opportunity at home in prime time to take care of a team that did not have postseason hopes, and we let it slip away. And then you're spent all offseason wondering, okay, if we just won this game,
what could have happened?
Could we have beaten the Raiders, and maybe something happens and you end up in the dance and you break that postseason streak. And so I think there's good awareness from this team that in some ways, despite how talented the Browns are, despite how they've played in some of these games, it's still a game that even if they were 6-5 or 7-4, like, it's still a game that at home you should win. And we've talked about the importance of winning at home, the importance of having that home field advantage and consistently being able to rely on those wins. And we talked way back after the Chargers game, Elisa, that Broncos might not be able to afford another loss at home. And so they've got 3 more games left at Empower Field at Mile High. You might need to win them all to get to the playoffs. And this is just a game where, as Mike McGlinchey said, like, we've got to be locked in and ready to go. He said that week-to-week mentality exists, but, man, in the playoff positioning, there are some teams behind you, but then you look at the schedules coming up, and Denver's got some tough games in terms of going to LA, going to Cincinnati. You've got a game after the bye against the Colts, who have struggled but are in the playoff hunt. And then, of course, Kansas City. Like, Broncos' schedule is going to toughen up here, whereas some of these other teams, like a Miami, for example, is about to hit an easier stretch.
Yeah.
And so you've got to kind of bank these wins and bank this
as much
margin.
As you can,
Well, you can, and like, you think about a team like Cincinnati that I think has 7 losses right now, 6 or 7, but you play them in a couple weeks. And so if you lose that game, now all of a sudden you've got to be ahead of them by a game in the standings, or else the tie break comes into play. So you've got to find a way to get these wins. And listen, no game in the NFL is ever easy, but when you have a 3-win team coming to your home stadium in prime time, first Monday night game here in quite a while, especially with fans. There was a 2020 Monday Night Football game, but there were 500 people here because of the COVID regulations. You've got to go back, I think, to 2018 potentially to find the last home Monday Night Football game with fans. And so haven't had these opportunities often. We know Sean Payton talks about when you win football games, you get to play in these types of games. You get to play in prime time. You mentioned the Chargers game and all that. You got to take advantage of this one. Yeah,
well, just looking at some of the playoff numbers, 3 of the remaining 5 games that the Broncos have are teams chasing them in the AFC playoff race. So to your point on what Adam Troutman said, he was like, look, right now we're in control of what happens to us, and we have to keep it that way, because we cannot let our fate land on another team's, and what they're doing. And that's a really big point. And when I talked to Malcolm Roach after practice, I asked, it's a late bye week for this team. And I said, how do you stay focused to not overlook this team, because the bye week is so close? And he's like, because we all understand that we have a task at hand and we know what the ultimate goal is. And now that the playoff picture is getting a little clearer for this team, they're really kind of focusing on like, okay, what can we do? And like to your point, that week by week mentality is such an easy thing to say, right? Oh, just take a week by week. It's easy to say that, but this team has really kind of not underestimated any opponent. I mean, even with going to Vegas and defeating the Raiders, that team has not won a game since they lost to the Broncos. And so when you go into that, you could have overlooked that as well, but they didn't. And the way that they were able to win that game, and Will Lutz kept them in it, and Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton really got things going in the second half. It's like you can't oversee this primetime game. And Malcolm Roach said it best. He was like, it's better to go into primetime and it's better to win a game in primetime and go into your bye week with a good taste in your mouth, because it's like, we cannot afford to lose this game and then go into a bye week. He's like, that will sit with me all week.
It's true. Well, and the guys have talked about like how hard of a stretch this has been to play 13 consecutive games before a bye week. It's unusual. It is the latest bye week. I looked through decades of Broncos seasons, and it's like it's right up there with the latest bye week ever. Back in 2001, they moved the bye week because of 9/11, but teams got that weekend off. It was not necessarily planned, obviously, but they didn't play that weekend. So if you're talking about a planned bye week or like not having a break this late, I'm not sure that's ever happened for the Broncos. Sean Payton has said he's never had a bye this late, but you've gone through all of this while some other teams have had the advantage of having a bye week, and you've found a way to have a 7-5 record. You can find a way to have an 8-5 record. And how great would it feel to get to 8-5 and then get a bye this late in the year to be like, listen, all we've got is 4 games left. Let's rest up and be ready for the stretch. But like you said, you don't want to put all this work in and then let a winnable game slip away right before the bye week, because then you're going to be like, man, we almost got to where
you have to sit with it. And we've seen, especially when this team had a tough loss and they were playing Thursday Night Football, they're like, we've lost it, and it's easy and it's good to have a game right after because there's no time to dwell on it. This is not a situation they want. They don't want to dwell on a game of them losing to the Browns, and now the playoff implications are a little different because according to the Next Gen stats, I don't know if you had them pulled up.
73.6% chance to make the playoffs with a win this week. Falls to 46.5% if they lose, which is the biggest probability swing among all AFC teams this week. So it's a big game, and I know that the Browns are not. You're in this interesting stretch where like you play the Falcons, Raiders, Browns, and none of those 3 teams is like directly involved in your playoff race, right? Because the Falcons are in the NFC, and then the Raiders and Browns have records where they're not challenging for a wild card spot. And so you can't look at it like the Colts game. You can look at as, hey, if they beat us, they're taking our playoff spot. Or and if we beat them, we're knocking them out of the playoff race. You can't look at this sort of game the same way. And so you've got to kind of bring your own juice, bring your own intensity, find your own
motivation or momentum to kind of come into this.
And that's where like the leadership I think is so important. Sean Payton as the coach, you've got these important vets like a Cortland Sutton, and then the young guys like Bo, who's been playing well and has been leading and got these guys believing in what he can do. Believing in what they can do. So it is a game you've got to find a way to win, and it's possible. We've talked a lot about some of these games, like can you find a way to win it, and then they go out and they win by double digits. Denver's tied for the most double-digit wins in 2024. The Lions snuck one out against Chicago. So if the Broncos get one this weekend, they jump into the lead in that category. Their 16.4 margin of victory is the 4th largest in the NFL. So when the Broncos are on and they beat people, they're beating them by quite a bit. And I do think that maybe this Raiders game last week, maybe you recognize, hey, we weren't. Sean Payton said maybe you're ready 13 or 14 times. And he kind of alluded that maybe the Broncos weren't ready. Maybe you realize that, hey, we got away with one, or we had to come back and win, and we did that. But let's be ready for Monday Night Football and come out there and leave no doubt and go into the bye week feeling really good. Yeah, we're really excited for the show of Primetime on Monday Night Football. And that will do it for this edition of Altitude Advantage. Again, I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. This is our historian, our quarterback, wide receiver here in the we're going to call it the blue sky here. Blue-orange sky here. Okay. Aric DiLalla. But we're excited to see the show. Monday Night Football is going to be a fun one. What about Suze? I don't think Suze is mad at you. Okay. Well, we'll figure it out after the show. Thanks for listening.
Suits.